Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Zmore, the dad in DPS, and today we are talking about Daemon Ex Machina Titanic Scion. Now, if you've not heard of the Daemon Ex Machina series, it is a interesting game that started off on the Nintendo Switch. It is very similar, or at least the original is very similar to Armored Core in the sense that you have a arsenal or mech, whatever you want to call it, and you design the way that it functions via different armor pieces and weapons. This can make you incredibly tanky, can make you incredibly fast, can make you fire lots of bullets or use swords. There's loads of different ways and types of playstyles that you can use, especially in the original game, and it captivated me. Like, Daemon Ex Machina is one of the first games that this channel covered in an extensive manner, and I absolutely adored it. The story was fun, quirky, not great, but fun and quirky. The character designs were amazing, and the art style I just absolutely adore, as well as the gameplay. It was very, very captivating, and I found it incredibly fun. So when the new edition of the game, Titanic Scion, came out, you can imagine I was very excited. Now, unfortunately, this excitement was met by disappointment, but that was more of a technical issue than an actual, issue with the game. Technically, you could argue it is an issue with the game as well. Now, if you don't know what was going on with me last month, I obviously had updated one of my NVIDIA drivers. Unfortunately, what it seemed to do is this caused anything that was using the latest version of Unreal Engine to lag the balls out. And that included Dead by Daylight and Titanic Scion. There were a couple other games, but I really wasn't playing them all too much, so it really didn't apply. And because of this, I really could not get my teeth into Daemon Ex Machina. The game would take a massive frame hit after I'd loaded into a map and spent maybe 10 minutes in a specific section. Now, this is problematic because it's a relatively open world game, and as a result, I just could not focus. It was so laggy and so buggy and so broken because of this NVIDIA patch, which is really disappointing, and it made me kind of feel the sympathies that a lot of people are probably having with, for example, games like Monster Hunter Wilds, because normally I don't experience these issues. It was incredibly frustrating and annoying. But the good news is that eventually this sorted itself out with the latest NVIDIA patch, which allowed my graphics card and everything to run properly. And the game has run perfectly since. I am having no issues whatsoever. So this is why it's taken me this long to actually get into the game and complete it, and then be able to give you guys a genuine review. And what I have to say, despite the initial issues I was having, this game is definitely something very fun, and we'll get into why and how. Now, to give you the basic premise of Daemon Ex Machina is you take control of a character that is an outer. Now, an outer is basically a superhuman who has been mutated by femtoparticles. Femtoparticles being the big MacGuffin of the game that basically affects everything. Now, these femtoparticles can either mutate humans into an outer or turn them into a thing called an immortal. An immortal is basically this big monster thing, and they range from, little flying monsters that fire lasers at you to big ass giant robot with sword and shield. There's loads of different immortals, and they all have different abilities and do different crazy things. In the previous game, the biggest kind of gameplay loop was you fighting the colossal immortals that all had different abilities, did different things, and were incredibly cool, and it was basically a game that's centered around big boss fights. This game takes a little bit of a different turn to that, but we'll get into that in a little bit. And then essentially you do all this in a robot suit called an arsenal. In the previous game, an arsenal was closer to like a Gundam. In this game, it's closer to an Iron Man suit. And these all have really cool designs and graphically look really amazing. They put a lot of their effort and detail into character design. And when it gets down to that, the character designs and the designs of the arsenals are all epic. They look really cool. The weapons are awesome, all that kind of thing. But I do find that the game tends to lack in that graphical department when it comes to the environments. The environments are very big in the new game. They were very small in the previous game, but they're very big in the Titanic Scion. And I'm going to be honest, they're not that graphically impressive. When you've got games like Red Dead Redemption 2, Cyberpunk 2077, like there's so many really detailed and graphically intensive games out there these days in open worlds. And when it comes to the open world in Titanic Scion, I don't think it quite matches up to the spectacular brevity, and it just doesn't look as good as it does in other games. But that being said, I don't believe that is something that should be a downside to a game. They've tried to do something different from their previous iteration, and I think for the most part they've done quite well with it. I will say I struggle with open world games at sometimes, because I am the kind of guy that goes, ooh, what's that? Ooh, what's that? And then I've spent 20 hours doing very little instead of the main story. So graphically, the game has some very good places where it focuses attention, like the characters, but I do feel it lacks the graphic fidelity and the environments in comparison. They focused on something that they thought was really important, and granted, the character designs and models and the way the arsenals look is spot on and amazing. I just wish they spent more time on the environments, because I do feel like they kind of get lost in the action of it. But what I will say is that the way that the game looks and the style of it is very, very close to what the original game brought. The environments, the way that there's this overarching red glow, and just how the game generally feels is very Daemon X Machina. I can point at it and go, that is a Daemon X Machina game. And I can point at the other game and go, that is also a Daemon X Machina game. So I think they've done well with what they've had. But at the same time, if you're one of those sticklers for just insane graphics, this game might disappoint you. Then we move on to the soundtrack. Now, something I thought was amazing in the previous Daemon X Machina is the soundtrack for the game in general. Each of the boss fights, each of the Colossal Immortals in the original game had this banging soundtrack. Like, it was absolutely spectacular. It brought you into hype, and it felt incredibly epic to be fighting the different Colossal Immortals. Now, this game does have a really good soundtrack as well. Like, Daemon X Machina does several things right, and that is, like, gameplay, spot on, like, fun, great. I enjoyed both games. But music, they just hit out of the park, and it has some of the most epic soundtrack in video gaming. It just, they know how to set an atmosphere and to build, like, your tension, your anxiety, and your excitement during a boss fight. And I have thoroughly enjoyed the soundtrack in this game, as I did in the previous. Now, if you played the previous Daemon X Machina, you'll know how the gameplay worked. But for people who didn't, it was a very fast-paced mech shooter, essentially. You used melee weapons, you used different guns, you used different cannons, and you flew around and beat the crap out of any colossal or regular immortals that you came across. You also fought against other arsenals, but that was a smaller part of the game in comparison. Now, what I would say about the original game is that you spent a lot of time in the air, and it felt like you were basically just flying 99.9% of the time. In this new game, flying has a greater cost to it. Flying around is harder to maintain, because when you're flying around, you're not as fast. It feels like you kind of sort of float, unless you're deliberately using your boosters to move around and move quickly. In this game, in Titanic Scion, it does feel like you are moving at a lot slower of a pace. And when it comes to the way that you need to use dodges and your combat style, it feels a lot closer to a Dark Souls game than it does to the original Daemon X Machina. Granted, in the original one you dodged quite a bit, but it also felt like you had a more significant momentum, and you were always moving around at a speed. Now, granted, the arsenals in the original game versus the arsenals in the current game are very different. The original arsenals were these big mechs. Your current arsenal is literally, as I said earlier in the video, an Iron Man suit. And whether that design means that they had to move slower, I'm really not sure. And you do eventually unlock what I would consider to be a traditional arsenal in the game, but it's more of like a special kind of attack, and it does sort of move quicker in the air. So I feel like that's one kind of thing. I do feel like the game feels a lot slower paced and more reactionary than the original game did. And don't get me wrong, the original game did have reactionary moments, but because you were moving so quick, if you were good at using the playstyle to move at a pace, you could avoid attacks just by sheer momentum. Whereas in this one, you do need to think about it and see the attacks incoming and try and dodge them. This can have a lot of problematic moments, and it's the one downside I felt about the combat system in this game and the way that it played was there's quite a lot of enemies that use this attack where essentially they not teleport, but they fly above you really quickly and then they come flying down. Now, if you're locked onto them and you tried to dodge that attack, quite often what the game would do would flip your camera looking straight up, and as a result, it would completely like bugger you, essentially. It was really awkward to dodge and really pissed me off a few times because I was like, if I see him going above me, and I unlock from him and then try and jump out of the way, otherwise the lock-on actually screwed me in the process. And there were a couple of attacks in the game like that from different enemies where it felt like the way that the lock-on system worked and the way that you were playing would completely screw you over because certain things were just so quick to react to. That being said, it did feel like I could just basically brutally force my way through most of the game, and I could just take out enemies with sheer brute force and not skill. Some enemies still difficult as balls, and you have to exploit mechanics, exploit better gear, exploit different things, and overall I had fun. I did have fun. I do feel it's a very different game from its predecessor, but at the same time I did enjoy it. I did enjoy playing it. Now, along with the gameplay comes a lot of different things. There are an abundant amount of different weapons, which give you different playstyles. You've got fist weapons, you've got hammers, you've got swords, machine guns, laser guns, charging laser guns that do massive damage if you charge them, but you have to kind of stand still when you're using them. There's lots of different weapons and customizability in this game. And the great thing about that is that if you are having difficulty with a specific enemy because your specific playstyle is not working, you can change it up and make your arsenal completely different. You can have a tanky arsenal, a fast arsenal, in the middle kind of arsenal. You can also have an arsenal armed to the teeth with rockets and explosions and all manner of different things. You can play this game any way that you want, and essentially play it like, I suppose, an Anthem or an Iron Man game, and you get to choose the way that you want your arsenal to be. And I really enjoyed that about the original game. I enjoy it about this one as well. I will say there are some of my favorite gear from the original game made it into this one, so I have been enjoying using those kind of things and seeing how well they go, and using things that I used in the original game. That being said, it doesn't have the machine gun arms from the original game, which is disappointing because I loved them. You could just stand there and blast for hours. Some of my favourite weapons in the original game. But, you never know. They might add them in later on, but we will definitely see about that. Now, when it comes to the story of Titanic Scion, it leaves a lot of questions to be answered. The original game did very much the same thing. I will not lie, the original story wasn't the best. It's not like a literary work for all ages. And neither is this. It's your typical anime style, crazy, weird journey into a world where you don't get your answers. There's still answers to be made. Like, things happen in the game that I saw coming a mile away, and my brain was like, I would like an explanation of why, or, more context. Like, I saw the things coming. I saw them coming because the red flags were there. But there's still no context to the back of it, of why this happened, or who they were prior to this, and why they did this and why they did that. And the end of the game came on very quickly, and I was like, I get it, I get it, but Why? Give me a why. Give me a how, when, where, more context, more backstory. Am I like these essentially people show up and I'm like, give me some context about these dickheads. Like, that's the main thing. I want context. I want lore. I want more information. Maybe that'll come with more patches and we'll see flashbacks and more information or find, like, data panels and all manner of things. But there's really not a huge amount of context about some of the characters in the game, and I'm sitting there going, but I want to know more about them. I want to learn more about them and why they're the way they are. And you don't really get it. You just get, like, little bits of story blurbs that are put into death scenes, or just general interactions before combat, and you're kind of like, I want more. I want more of your context. Like, I'm supposed, like, this is supposed to be sad, but I'm looking at you going, I don't care that much because I don't know enough. And yeah, the story's just anime jank. It's just anime jank. But I don't really play Daemon X Machina games for the story. I play it for the cool gameplay, the mechs, and the fun things in it. And yeah, the story could be significantly better, but it's there. It's there. And I have questions, but I didn't get the answers. I got more answers in the original game than I did in the goddamn freaking this one, which is really bad because I had to sort of pick at lore, and I did old videos about the lore in the other games, about specific characters and information about them. This one, I don't know how I would go about that because I'm kind of like, what did I say about this guy? Like, what did I say about them? So, how do I think Titanic Scion stacks up to its predecessor and just in general as a game? Against its predecessor, I do feel like I did prefer the original, and that might just be because the playstyles between the two games are very different. And the original game had a very unique and specific way that it played and did things. In comparison, I feel like the newest iteration, Titanic Scion, is a lot clumsier feeling. Like, it honestly feels like you have a lot more mechanics that you need to master and a lot more things that you need to be able to do in order to combat and do things in the game in general. As a result, it slows down the way the game feels, and it doesn't feel as quick-paced and epic when you come to your boss fights. And that's not to say it's bad. I definitely think it was a really fun game, and I did enjoy the combat. I did enjoy playing it, and I will enjoy continuing to play it because there's a lot of stuff I need to unlock and I need to do. But I do feel like I preferred the original. If you stack it up to, like, other games that are out there, I definitely would prefer to play Daemon X Machina, Titanic Scion to lots of other games I've played in recent times. There is something solid there, and when it comes to what they bring out in the future and the more bosses they add, the different content they add, I'm looking forward to exploring that. And on top of that, there's a lot of replayability and what's the word? You can fight specific things. Like, when it comes to the boss fights, you can go back and you can take on any of the bosses in the game after you've completed it. So I can go to a specific chapter and fight that specific boss, or a specific part of the game and fight that specific boss. It lets me replay the game as I wanted to. So it does have a lot of replayability and the ability to just customize your experience. And I think that is great in modern games. There has to be this ability to replay a part of a game without having to play through the whole thing again, which I think is, ever since levels stopped being a thing, a lot of games have felt like, oh, if I want to do that specific thing again, I have to play through the whole game. And it can be a bit of a pain in the arse. This game does eliminate that, and you can go back after you've completed it and then just pick and choose where you want to play and how you want to play and what you want to see. So yeah, I think that's something they've definitely done really right. So overall, I definitely would recommend it. I would recommend you pick up Titanic Scion, but more so, I'd recommend that you pick up the original Daemon X Machina because it's still an absolute banger of a game with a classic soundtrack, and just everything was awesome about it. And this game is also awesome. So either way, guys, hopefully you've enjoyed today's video. If you have, don't forget to leave a like, a comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.
let us take